everyone should be blessed with a very good new week. We are here with the book of Mishlei, and we are up to chapter 6, Perek Vav in the book of Mishlei. And the chapter starts with the discussion of a concept called arev, which means someone who's a guarantor. Meaning, in today, when you want to take a loan, you go to the bank, you sign papers. Back then, in the olden days, in the times of King Solomon, if a person wanted a loan, then they made sure that they had a guarantor. They made sure that someone signed as a guarantor. And what that would mean is that if you signed as a guarantor, it means that if the borrower doesn't pay their loan, the lender comes to you. So you only want to sign such a paper or make such a commitment if it's someone you really trust, if it's someone you really can count on. King Solomon discourages people from taking on such a commitment because he says, chapter 6, Bni imaravta l're'echa, my son, if you have guaranteed your friend, if you told your friend that you will be the guarantor for their loan, takata lazar kapecha, then you have committed your life to someone who perhaps may be a stranger. And it has to do with what the rabbis say with the concept of a neder, of a vow, which is, it says elsewhere in Mishlei, it's better to not make a vow, not make a pledge, not make a promise, and not pay it than make the pledge and then fail to live up to that pledge. That's the idea here. The idea here is if you make a pledge, you have to live up to it. So you're better off not making the pledge if you're not in a position to actually live up to that pledge. So, Bni maravta l're'echa, takata lazar kapecha. You have basically, once you've made the pledge, you're in a bind because you made that pledge. Nukashta be'imrei picha, you have sort of stumbled. The word mokesh, interestingly, in Hebrew, is both for stumbling, but in modern Hebrew, it's the word for a landmine. Nukashta be'imrei picha, nilkadeta be'imrei picha. You have been captivated by what you've said. Asezot efo b'ni ve'hinatzel. If you want to save yourself from this situation, here's what you should be doing. Go beg your friend for forgiveness and to get you off of that because you have stumbled and you are already in that bind. Rashi points out that there's a more homiletical, more metaphorical aspect to this seemingly trivial advice of King Solomon, and he says it's talking about the Jewish people at Mount Sinai. He says if you have committed yourself, if you've put yourself in a situation where you guarantee that you will be committed to something, meaning the Jewish people at Mount Sinai accepting the Torah, saying that they will 100% keep his Torah, then that's a bind you can't get out of. You can't say, oh, well, I accepted the Torah before, but I am no longer accepting it. That is not an option. So he says, therefore, if you are in that bind and you are struggling with a mitzvah that you didn't keep, with something that you haven't done properly, then make sure that you go to God, speak to him, and plead with him for forgiveness. And that is the idea here. So he's saying, no matter what, recognize that when you make a pledge, that pledge is very much binding. I'm sorry. Do this, therefore, my son, you'll be saved. Once you shake your hand to your friend, you are already bound and committed. Go and beg your friend for forgiveness and ask your other friends, your mutual friends, to also ask him to forgive. Do not give any sleep to your eyes. Don't sleep at all. Do not allow your another synonym for eyes. Don't let them sleep at all. King Solomon often uses metaphors that have to do with the bird's trap or the deer's being trapped, and he says you should save yourself and get out of this bind. Now King Solomon uses what probably is his most popular metaphor in Israel. It's known, a lot of people don't even know it's from here, from the book of Mishlei. But it's an extremely famous saying. It may also be a very, very famous saying in English. But here's how it goes. Vav, Lech el hanemala atzel. He says, go to the ant. You ever see an ant carrying a grain of food? Sometimes the grain of food is 10, 20 times the size of the ant. You ever see the ant go and it takes it to the place where it's living, it takes it underground. You can sometimes see an entire column of ants, and they're all taking food. They're all searching food in the summer. And the reason they're doing that is because the winter is going to come and there won't be any food out there. So they go and they gather food from all over. Now, did you ever wonder who's telling the ants to do this? In fact, it's even more interesting. We know now that the only one that survives the winter is the queen ant. So all the army of ants are going and gathering, they're gathering grain and food for the winter, when in fact, most of them will not survive their winter. And so King Solomon says, Lech el hanemala atzel re'eh drachea v'chacham. Go to the ant, lazy one. Re'eh drachea v'chacham. See how the ant works, and you will be even smarter. Why? Because there's no one who tells the ant what it has to do. No one is there to tell the ant not to go and sit on the beach and just have a good time. Nonetheless, the ant goes day in, day out. It schleps, it walks, it toils, and it makes sure to prepare food for the winter. There's no one, there's not a policeman, there's not a work supervisor, manager. No one is there telling the ant what it should do or what it should take. It prepares its food in the summer, and it gathers in the time of harvest all of its food. Now Shlomo HaMelech says, listen, who am I talking to? Who is this ant analogy for? He says, Ad matai atzel tishkav. Until when, O lazy one, will you sleep? Will you lay in bed? Matai takum mishnatecha. When will you wake up from your slumber? And so the entire analogy here of the ant is meant for the lazy person. Shlomo HaMelech speaks to the lazy person and he says, listen, look at the ant. The ant wakes up, it works hard, and it knows that that's what's necessary for the greater good. Even if it won't survive the winter, it goes and it does it, and it works day and night. And it's something that's so important in a day and age where we're sort of all thinking of ourselves often, and to look at the ant and its efforts on behalf of everyone. Because even though they won't all survive, some of them will survive because of the work that she is doing. And so the idea is, look at the ant. It has no one telling it what to do, no work manager, nothing, and yet still it goes on and works. So King Solomon says, therefore, if the person is lazy, they should take this to heart and really be mindful of this. So that's why he says, Ad matai atzel tishkav. Until when will the lazy person sleep? And now he goes on to Pasuk Yud. Don't sleep a lot, and that's also a very important question, important issue, because it's always how much should you sleep? Should you sleep? There's actually a lot of studies that show that we're more productive if we sleep, a good 8 hours a night. Nonetheless, King Solomon urges you not to sleep more than necessary. Interestingly, there's a commentary of the Rambam, Maimonides, who says that the person should sleep, I believe he says 8 hours a day. He learns it from a pasuk that says, Az yanuach li. The word Az, the letter Aleph is the value of 1, Zayin is 7. And so he says 8 hours is the optimal time. But beyond what is necessary, the Rambam says, King Solomon says, do not sleep more than what is needed. And so King Solomon says, Me'at sheinot, me'at tenumot, don't sleep so much. Me'at chibuk yadayim mishkav, and don't sit. That means when you're like holding your hands together, you're just sort of not doing anything. So that is Math Chiluk Yadayim. I'd like to also thank my friend Josh for all of his input here. If you sleep little, if you don't sit around on your arms and you're actually working all the time, then the things that you are impoverished of, the things that you're missing, the things that you're lacking, will come strolling in. The word of reishecha sounds like rosh, but it actually here means rash, poor. So that which you are impoverished of will come strolling right in. And anything that you are missing will come in like a armor. Oh, I see we have more people joining us. Welcome, thank you. All right, so we continue. We're now in Mishlei chapter 6 and Pasuk Yud Bet. Now that King Solomon has completed his lesson on the dangers of laziness and on the importance of hard work, he goes on to the importance of honest work. And it's interesting, a lot of these values were actually taken by the original Puritans that came to the United States. One of their fundamental beliefs was the idea of it's called the Protestant work ethic. It's something that's very important to the Amish to this day. The idea of work as a value in and of itself, the value of working hard, of disliking laziness, that all those things are values that they're called the Protestant work ethic, but they're right here taught by King Solomon. They're right here taught by Shlomo HaMelech, where he says, "Me'at shenot, me'at tnumot." There's a value in and of itself to hard work. That's what King Solomon says. Next, Pasuk Yud Bet. Adam blial ish aven holech ikshut. King Solomon says the worst possible thing is someone who is dishonest with their words. They use their words in a way of trickery, and he goes on to use sort of a graphic example. Pasuk Yud Gimel, he says, "Koretz beinav," someone who winks with his eyes. Molel beraglav, he stumbles with his feet. Moreh be'etzbotav, he shows with his fingers. What's King Solomon talking about? He's talking about someone who says one thing but means the other. If you want to really get his message, you have to look at the winks, the nods, the finger movements, the stumping with his feet. All those things, King Solomon says, are the opposite of hard work. They're the opposite of honesty. And King Solomon clearly despises a conduct where a person is not what we call echad balev. When a person is echad ba'peh, meaning they say one thing, they mean something else, they're hinting at one thing, they're speaking of another. That is something that is the exact opposite of someone who's hardworking and honest. So someone who's winking in his eyes and stomping with his feet, showing with his fingers. Now, Pasuk Yudaled, his heart is always flipping. One day he's thinking of this, one day he's thinking of that, one day he means this, one day he means that. Really, someone who can't be counted on. Not only is this person someone who is dishonest with what they're saying, but they also cause fights. They say one thing to the other. They stoke disharmony, and that again is something that King Solomon speaks out. And what is the fate of this person? The person who is one thing in his heart, one thing in his mouth. King Solomon says suddenly his downfall will come. He will become broken with no healing. Now we come to also a very, very, very famous set of 6 analogies. King Solomon says there are 6 and 7 things that God hates more than anything. It's really fascinating. Each one of them is a lesson in and of themselves. I hope we can do them justice, but they're famous. They're cited in the Talmud often. And it's right here from Mishlei chapter 6. Shesh hena saneh Hashem v'sheva to'avot libo. There are 6 things that God hates, and there are 7 that are absolutely despised by his soul. So he starts with the first one. The first one is Einaim Ramot. Einaim Ramot, someone who is looking up high and is always sort of looking at others from above. That is the first thing. Arrogance, someone who is arrogant, that is the first character trait that it says that Hashem dislikes. Next is Leshon Sheker, someone who speaks with dishonesty. That is another thing that Hashem doesn't like. And then last thing is Yadayim Shofchot Dam Naki, hands that spill the blood of the innocent. And it's interesting because in Judaism, spilling blood of the innocent doesn't literally just mean someone who kills someone. It also means someone who embarrasses someone, someone who causes someone to really cause great embarrassment. And that is also something that's considered like spilling the blood of others. Yadayim shofchot dam naki, people who spill the blood of the innocent. And in this case, it can be not only someone who is literally spilling the blood in the sense of murder, but also someone who is ruining someone else's livelihood, someone who is embarrassing others, and someone who causes someone really to feel shamed. All those things are considered yadayim shofchot dam naki, hands that are spilling the blood of the innocent. The next example, King Solomon says in Pasuk Yudchet, is Lev Choresh Machshavot Av, a heart that thinks of conspiring thoughts, meaning someone who, when they are with others, when they are with friends, with other people, they're constantly thinking of how to make other people's lives more difficult and are thinking thoughts of deception. And last but not least, last in this pasuk, Raglaim Maharot Larutz L'Ra, legs that run quickly to do bad. It's interesting because sometimes people do stumble, sometimes people do sin, and sometimes people do end up doing things that they are not proud of. There's a big difference between someone who ends up sinning and someone who runs quickly to everything bad, someone who rushes to do bad. Someone who's rushing to do bad, that's considered negative. Even if someone ends up stumbling, even if they end up speaking Lashon Hara, whatever it is, there's a very big difference between doing it with joy. And hello to everyone joining us. Again, I see more people joining. Even if someone is doing it with is doing something bad, nonetheless, there's a difference between someone who does something bad and someone who does something bad with haste. They run to do it. The next of the list of 7, Yafir Kzavim Ed Sheker, someone who spreads falsehoods, and someone who is a false witness. Those things are also considered the things that God really takes very seriously. And now the last one is considered the most serious, according to King Solomon. Of all these things, what do you think is the most serious thing? Of all the things that King Solomon mentioned, you have the person who is arrogant, the person who's lying, the person who's shofchot dam naki, who has a crooked heart, legs running to do bad, someone who spreads falsehoods. Which do you think is the worst possible, most horrible of all of these? What do you think is the worst possible scenario of all these sins that are listed? And this is really so important to take to heart. So King Solomon, the worst of all these, he says, what is the worst possible thing? Meshaleach medanim bein achim. Someone who causes fights between brothers, between close friends, that is the worst. Worst possible scenario is someone who goes to 2 close friends, to 2 brothers, to 2 good friends, and says, oh, your friend, your brother doesn't like you. Someone who causes that in the eyes of God is the worst possible thing. Because if they're already brothers, if they're already friends, if they're already close, then why would you be the one to cause any discord? Why would you cause any disconnect? And that is the idea here, where the most important thing to avoid is causing any discord between people. We are here every day, Sunday to Thursday, 12 o'clock to 12:20. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Very much appreciated. Everyone should have a very good week. Shavua Tov U'Mevorach. Thank you for all the people who came and listened, and Josh, really everyone that's here. Yishar Koach. And thank you for being with us.